Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It gives me immense pleasure to be a speaker at BTOES this year. And over the course of the next 30 minutes, I want to share with you the insights from Twitter's transformation journey and the magic that happens when you align strategy, operations, and execution. My name is Lakshmi Shankar. I'm a senior director of Twitter product strategy and operations. I actually believe what I am talking about, and there's a recurring theme, is to talk about the learnings from Twitter's transformation journey. And the reason I believe it's important to focus on learnings is because of this very famous quote and favorite quote of mine from Jack Welch around an organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. And over the course of these 30 minutes, I really want to focus on those learnings. But to get to those learnings, I believe it's important to talk about what is Twitter and how we started, the highs and the lows, and those incredible turnaround years, which really provided the foundation for those learnings that hopefully we're learning from. I'm confident, in fact, that we're learning from. And I want to share here with those learnings, as I believe that they will not only present the competitive advantage for us, Twitter, the company going forwards, but hopefully some of these learnings can be applicable to you too. I want to qualify that everything I'm about to share are my opinions. And with that liberty, let me start off by talking about Twitter. Twitter, many of you are probably very familiar with, is a social media platform, along with others that you may have used, such as Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. And many of you are probably aware of how and why you use it. And like with many social media platforms, even if you're not aware, I'm very certain that you kids are. And kids all over the world have really taken up to social media platforms like Twitter. But perhaps the best way in which you probably come across Twitter is through politicians and celebrities and entertainers around the world who use our platform, and none more so than probably what's topical on top of all our minds right at the moment. And but the platform is not just used by politicians, and it's not just used by politicians to talk through to or connect with their audience and followers in a direct way. It's also used to start very powerful movements to connect the world in one voice, and none more so than the Me Too movement, which I'm very proud to say really was a phenomenal example of the use of social media for good, and specifically Twitter, to really kickstart this movement that started in 2016 with Alicia Milano tweeting Me Too, and really awakened the world to this problem that we had. And Twitter provided the voice for everybody to pour their concerns and their challenges that they went through. And this platform has also done that in many other circumstances. Black Lives Matter was another platform that was another movement that Twitter gave voice to. And all the way through to the example that you see here with Greta reaching out to Trump and other politicians to enlighten people around the importance of climate change and what an incredible existential threat that it poses. And one of the things that I'm certainly proud of as a platform Twitter has provided is the level playing field, the opportunity for every voice, no matter where you come from, what background you have, what are your beliefs, that this platform sees none, only sees your voice and only hears your voice and wants to amplify your voice so that you can connect and your voice and your opinions are heard by others. The power of social media and the power of such platforms is also to remind us what is precious in life, and none more so than the outpouring that we saw with the unfortunate accident and us saying goodbye, the world saying goodbye to Kobe Bryant and his daughter and other members who were unfortunate in the helicopter accident that happened earlier this year. And we saw Girl Dad as a trending globally, and reminded us of this incredible relationship between a father and a daughter. And platforms like Twitter has this incredible ability to move you and also introduce a whole new vernacular that we use on a day-to-day basis that we have not used before. And we're also spending incredible amount of time on the platform like never before. In fact, most recent study found that the average person in the world is spending around 5 years and 4 months on social media. Like pretty much certain that that was not the case 5 years ago. And this time that we're spending in front of our screens in this way is also changing the way we buy. And this is clearly something that is being capitalized upon not only by platforms like Twitter, who are making incredible amount of money through advertising on their platform to capitalize on the time that you're spending on platforms like us, but also others. The market for global digital ad sales seems to see no bound, and we're seeing phenomenal transition from traditional advertising through to digital advertising. And this trend is set to continue. And we're seeing more and more novel ways in which everyday companies are using platforms like Twitter to connect with their audiences, and also using new formats such as videos, clips, even sometimes virtual reality, augmented reality, to provide interesting experiences for you to remember and recall these products, such that when you were to buy in the real world, or maybe through online, that it yields to a conversion purely because this is where you're spending your time, and people and advertisers recognize it and want to capitalize on brand recognition. And that's Twitter. That's how, that's the platform, that's the power of the platform. And we talked about how we make money. And I want to switch gears into how it all started, and the highs and lows, because I believe that's quite important to understand and set that context for some of the critical turnaround that we did and the learnings that I will go on to in a moment. So Twitter started in 2006 with a simple idea that you saw Twitter, that Jack Dorsey, our CEO, sketch out, and you can see that on the left-hand side, and it just caught on fire. Something about the way, the simplicity of the platform, the ability to just tweet out what you are thinking to the world. It was just a very new phenomenon on that time, and it really caught on. And we saw, as with any great technology that starts off initially, an incredible surge in early adopters, and then we crossed the chasm and we really hit the early majority, late majority, and then essentially the world caught up. And Twitter became from a product to a platform, and it became a social media platform. It became a microblogging platform, and essentially it brought what was initially a platform for somebody to tweet out what they are thinking or feeling to professional publishers who wanted to use this to publish their content on the platform. And the moment you had an audience and a set of professional people who are preparing content for that audience, then it attracted advertisers to want to advertise and capitalize on the time that people are spending on content and reading content. And really, that's the incredible power of that platform and how Twitter grew. through this three-sided marketplace. And in fact, 2013, Twitter was one of the first few companies to IPO in terms of the number of years it took. It's only 7.6 years from the time it started, and that's fairly early and fairly soon for this industry, as you can see from some of the other comparables that we saw. And from this incredible high, we started experiencing some incredible lows, and a platform for no real reason other than having content and publishers and advertisers. Just as how quickly it grew, it started declining. And here, as you can see on this graphic, our revenue started really, unfortunately, plummeting. And that's because our audiences started deserting. Customers started moving on to other platforms. Some are Me Too platforms that we saw, and some are just other ways in which we're capitalizing that they wanted to spend their time and energy. And so moment we stopped losing eyeballs and started really not providing value to our customers, that really was the biggest challenge that we faced. And come fast forward to 2016, we really hit the very bottom, and there were rumors spreading around Twitter is for sale. There are many people who are interested in acquiring the company, and around about that time, 2016, was also the elections, if you recall, and we had challenges. Macroeconomic challenges, but also political challenges in terms of Russian interference in elections through social media companies like Twitter, and also there was a lot of challenges we faced in terms of the platform, which became very toxic as people started expressing, but felt abuse, both abuse in terms of the words, but also how they were made to feel, and very unsafe, and mental harm that the platform started causing. So we started seeing incredible levels of challenges, and we really lost our way as a platform. And it wasn't a surprise that we were under incredible scrutiny, both from regulators as well as from the world at large, as to what is this platform and have we completely lost our way. And then really started the turnaround years, which is really the beginning of some of our learnings. But I will quickly talk through how we turned around and then move on to our learnings. So around about 2016, Jack had come back, and he had almost spent a year as a CEO, returning back to the company that he helped found. He built a new set of leaders around him, and this picture, the person on the left-hand side is Leslie Berlin, who's our CMO, and she and others really started looking at what happened, and why was Twitter so incredibly successful, and one of the first to IPO, saw this incredible desertion of people on the platform and revenues plummeting. And really we started looking at, okay, of the three-sided marketplace, where do we need to concentrate? What happened? Who are we missing? Who do we need to get? And one of the biggest insights is that at the end of the day, as with any three-sided marketplace, where do you start? What matters most? I hope we never forget, because there's a big learning here, is at the end of the day, it's the customers that matters most. Where there are customers, publishers will come. Where there are publishers and customers and you're spending your time, advertisers will follow. And so we really went back to fundamentals of why do customers choose Twitter. And we spent incredible amount of time really understanding our customers, and what are our differentiators. And we understood it's personalization, selection, speed, and the social interaction that you get on the platform. And that's really why people come to Twitter. And so that really forced us to think about, okay, Twitter is about what's happening. And we have the ability to tell you what's happening around the world at speed, giving you the widest of selection, and the ability to take advantage of some of the social dynamics of sharing what you're thinking with your friends and also the world at large. And that really kickstarted our focus on branding and explaining to our customers why to use the platform. Twitter is about seeing what's happening, following your interests, joining the conversation, and staying in the know. Now, if you look at this, in hindsight, it's incredible that, of course, this is what Twitter is about. But at that time, believe you me, the world as well as internally, we were fairly unclear on why use the platform and why customers should hire Twitter. It's also not a coincidence that our resurgence and a turnaround also coincided with the heavy use of the platform by the world at large, and not least the president. And if I were to really look at what was the core, is this realization of identity and also a purpose. The power of a purpose-driven company is incredible, and it's incredibly important why what you're chasing and why it matters. Not least for explaining to the world, but also for retaining your talent. It's fairly foundational for us. And so we were very clear. Twitter is about what's happening, and our mission is to serve the public conversation by explaining to people about what's happening. And why do we believe in this? Because we believe that by serving the public conversation, we can help people learn something new, solve, understand each other's perspectives, and solve some of the most existential problems that face humanity. And it's an incredibly noble mission. And once that mission is clear, it became very clear as to why we need to do what we need to do. And so we were very clear that our mission is to serve the public conversation. We want to serve that conversation. We need to make that conversation healthier and more civic. And that laser focus on who are we, what matters, and where are we going, translated into our turnaround. And here, this graph that I'm showing is a depiction of our share price from the lows that you saw in 2016 to the steady rise that we're seeing over time through just this fundamental focus, which is the crux to our turnaround. And certainly, if I go back to number of users, it's been steadily coming back, and users are choosing the platform, and revenues are certainly back on the up, and our market cap is never been healthier. And so that is our turnaround. And so now, if I peel the layers and really try to synthesize these learnings, because ultimately those are the competitive advantage for Twitter going forwards. And I want to share, as I said, with you, because I believe these are fairly transcending, no matter what size of the organization you are, or what customers you're serving, be it enterprise or B2C. So let me start off with the fundamental learnings from the Twitter's turnaround story. Hopefully you already picked it up. It's the focus on customers. That is what we lost initially. And that's what we needed to refine as to why customers hire us. It's actually one of the most fundamental questions, and it's actually fairly obvious question, but it's not a question that we deeply think about. And I want to give an example from a very insightful case study from Clayton Christensen. The Harvard professor wrote a book called Competing Against Luck, which I highly recommend. And the genesis of it was from an article he published in Harvard Business Review around what customers really want. And it turns out that we really don't know at the surface level, and it requires us to really dig deeper. And he highlights in that case study an example of McDonald's seeing a surge in customers buying milkshakes at 6 a.m. in the morning. And the sale of milkshake just showed no bounds. And they tried to replace it with coffee, donuts, but nothing really took up as much as this category of food, milkshake. And so really, do the customers want milkshake? Is that what it is? But it really didn't make sense. And it's only after studying the customer and not just at the time of buying, but actually what are they using this platform? What are they using the milkshake for, that you really start to understand why customers are hiring milkshake as opposed to coffee or donuts or anything else. And it turns out that in the long rush hour traffics, that the milkshake provides the right amount of coldness as well as viscosity that lasts the duration of their entire travel and fills them up so that they don't become hungry. And it's quick when they come and get. And everything else, be it coffee or donuts, just didn't do that trick. And so there was some deep functional and emotional needs that in the circumstance of a 6 a.m. in the morning when they're about to go to work, that they chose a milkshake for, as opposed to other competing products like a coffee or donuts, which is the reason why customers chose milkshake. And really, that level of depth and insight is codified in design thinking, and it's really now how we build products. And so we are now so laser focused on why customers hire Twitter, and everything we build is focused around having deep level of customer empathy, and that empathy leading to hypothesis on a problem and what solutions and workarounds they have. And then experimenting, taking many shots at goal, because it's still hard to know the very single solution to the problem. So optimizing for how many shots you have at goal as opposed to how many goals you score through this incredible experimentation that we need to do, and then striking hopefully gold, and then very quickly executing, and not still rest on your laurels, but come back and see, did that actually do the trick? And this combination of design thinking, lean startup, and agile is the crux of how we build our products these days. And it's probably one of the most important learning that I want to leave you with today. The second is operating structures or operating model. And this is quite a very subtle thing, which is Twitter was prior to the turnaround time, was organized in terms of GMs and product GMs and multiple product GMs. And we started switching into a functional-based organization, recognizing fundamentally that we're a single product. And a product-based organization works well when you have multiple products and you can actually create full stack teams within each of those product areas and make GMs responsible for product growth as well as P&L to deliver on that goals. And in a single product company, it just didn't make sense. And so we reorged the company and really picked the right set of people at this stage of our company into a functional structure where we recognize it's a single product company. We need to protect the end-to-end customer experience and have a very clear set of priorities, which we're going to try and solve through resourcing and leverage the benefits of the functional talent of engineers, product managers, designers, researchers, quality assurance to really build the best product experience that we can for our customers. And it does add complexity. I agree with you there, and it does create potentially challenges on accountability and incentives. But this structure worked for us, and the lesson here really is about making sure that you understand the right operating structure to deliver on the customer strategy. And to solve for some of the challenges that we had around accountability and incentive, which is the third learning, we really invested in our objectives and key results, where we were very clear on where we were going, what's our mission, what's our customer strategy, and those were codified in terms of what do we want to achieve and how do we know if we're successful. And I had the pleasure of rolling out the OKR framework for Twitter where we codified this in terms of what do we want to do every year, what do we want to do on a every 6 months and quarterly basis, and what do we want to do on a monthly basis, and review and measure. And you don't move anything that you don't measure. And so this became an obsession for us to really make sure that the shots we were taking were ultimately yielding the top line growth and the revenues that we sought. And we codified all of this under 4 main objectives for us that were transcending across the functions. So it doesn't matter which functions you were, you knew that you were working on one of those 4 objectives, if not potentially all of those 4 objectives. And the way we build our product roadmaps and way teams build planner roadmaps is by looking at these objectives. What do we want to achieve in the next 12 to 18 months? Codifying it in terms of work streams and projects, and having teams do a portfolio balance of work that needs to be done across all of these objectives and allocate resources so that there's clarity from an individual contributor to a team to a function to the company, how what they do aligns all the way through to what matters for the company and the purpose that we exist as Twitter. Then one of the things that we also started learning is, okay, so we have clarity in our strategy, we have clarity in our operating structure, and we have aligned accountability with incentives. And so then the next question is, well, how do you then start to scale? We started investing in a set of processes, and the processes should follow systems and tools. And so the processes that we wanted to really standardize is clarity in what are objectives and key results, processes in how those OKRs translates into our roadmaps and how we do resource balancing, and how that translates into the actual work that's being done by that team, and having complete visibility, traceability, to try and actually deliver on the accountability that we're seeking so that it's incredibly objective. And processes are an incredibly key thing to get right, because you could overcook it and it becomes very bureaucratic. And so it's important to try and actually get the right process for the stage of the company that you are in. And so we spend a lot of time to understand the hierarchy of needs that exists across these 3 layers of the pyramid that I showed in the previous diagram, and to whom do those needs actually exist, so that we don't put an overbearing process and needs for an IC who all they care about at the end of the day is that, let me know what I need to build. And so we really focused on what is needed at various stages of the hierarchy, and then started investing in tooling by looking at what exists, and really analyzing, is there one tool that fits all, or are there tools that we may need to go into a hybrid in terms of best of breed for what we need at every stage, and then rolling out these tools over a period of time so that we build efficiency and reduce as much as possible manual work and errors that comes with it, and hopefully systematize and automate a lot of this to try and actually give us the scale that we are seeking as Twitter started turning around and growing. And so the 5th learning, which I want to talk about, is so at this stage, we've got the strategy, we've got the right structure, we put in the right accountability and incentives, and we started standardizing certain processes and tooling to help us scale. But ultimately, it's about the culture. And so we had to also evolve how we work. And some of the things that are very sacrosanct about Twitter's culture, and also some of the things that are forced upon us because of the pandemic world that we live in, is around remote and virtual workforce. And we were one of the first few companies that actually declared that we want to be able to have people work remotely before pandemic forced that as a reality. And so we were well on that way. And also decentralization, moving the centricity from San Francisco so that anybody, anywhere, from any background is able to work on the product, and talent alone matters. And how do you then preserve in a decentralized world where people are operating remote, this deep connection back to the mission? Because we believe that was, as I mentioned earlier, the key to turning around. A mission-driven company is critical for connecting the inner purpose to the company's broader purpose, and ultimately then empower people to then do their best work. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about this, and this is an ongoing work. We started reflecting on the org structure, and under a functional model, how can we still have greater clarity and roles and responsibilities and push decision-making down, push empowering teams down a lot more. We also looked at the role of meetings and how can we actually encourage asynchronous communication as much as possible. And then we started focusing as well on, as I said, autonomy and decision making. And one of the biggest areas that we are quite proud of as a company, that direction we're moving around, is this notion of holacracy, where you're moving away from a traditional hierarchy model into a model that actually gives power and gives decision making to teams, local teams, and teams to swarm on local problems, and importantly, problems that you identified as priority, but you are not confined to the org structures or the hierarchy that you are part of. And this is incredible, because you can then have these incredibly amoebic teams that are swarming around into various problems and clusters, solve them, and then move on. So when we have problems with how we're onboarding as a problem, we're not confining it to be the teams that are actually responsible for onboarding to solve, but anybody, anywhere in the company who has insights, goes and swarms on that problem and solves the problem, because that's one of our priorities, back to the idea of shared priorities. And then moves on to the next problem based on where the priorities are. So it removes the shackles of hierarchy and reporting lines and power, back to empowering where the teams and the circles that knows and are closest to the problem space to make the decisions that are required. And also, we are thinking a lot about, what are the different types of decisions that needs to be made. It turns out there are actually very, very few decisions that need to be made, and very few times of a year that those decisions need to be made, that you need to get absolutely right, those type A type decisions, where you need to have a highest level of certainty as depicted in this diagram. But many, many times you can actually have decisions that are much more empowered by the teams on the ground, and it's okay if you don't get it right. It's okay, and as I said, you encourage teams to take multiple shots on goal, and recognizing what are type A type decisions that needs this command and control and hierarchy, and what are type B type decisions where you accept a level of uncertainty and getting it wrong, but learning quickly, taking multiple shots at goal is one of the critical changes that we did and are continuing to make in helping us, and that has helped us through our turnaround. And so I want to take this moment to bring it all together, those 5 key lessons. And I want to try and rewind back to Twitter. And as I said, it started with a simple idea, and where we are now is seeing the back of this incredible turnaround. And in terms of where Twitter can be it in 10 years from now in 2030, or in 20 years from now in 2040, or any time in the future, the only thing that really matters are these key learnings, because those are a competitive advantage. And the learnings around focusing on your customers, making sure your operating structures continue to evolve, and making sure there's alignment in accountability and incentives, and standardizing the right processes at the right stage of your company, and then systematizing it, and then evolving the culture every step of the way, are some of the key learnings and my takeaways for you all from hopefully this session. And I truly believe, by bringing it all together, that this will be Twitter's fundamental. These learnings will be Twitter's ultimate competitive advantage, and I hope they will be yours too. With that, I'll pause. It's been a pleasure, and I'll take Q&A now, please.